If you're a frequent viewer of this channel, you know that I've often talked about how much I enjoy Monopoly as a board game. It's a unique combination of luck and skill. Many people think it's mostly luck, but yeah, check out some of the videos I've made on it. Skill is way more involved. Well, as much as I like Monopoly, my favorite board game is chess. Chess is 100% skill. I mean, I guess in case you get lucky enough to be paired up against someone who has less skill, but yeah, that's not what I'm talking about. Chess is, well, it's penetrated a lot of areas of my life, including my action figure collection. You'll see many areas around my office where different characters are set up engaged in a life or death match, not against each other, but on a chessboard that's nearby. I do have a chessboard in my office, but it tends to get cluttered. I think now it has more action figures on it than chess pieces, which is a shame too, because they're really nice stone pieces I got. A quick look at the history of the game before we get into some thoughts on licensed chess. There's a lot of controversy about who actually invented chess, with different people pointing to ancient China or even ancient Egypt as the original orienter of the game. Well, while there were board games in ancient Egypt, they were actually Senet, which is a completely different game altogether, although it does have similar areas. Chess really came from India, from a game called Chaturanga. I can't speak the dialect, but essentially it was the same type of concept, except elephants instead of bishops. There was a bet made between the Sultan of India and the Shah of Arabia, where they swapped games, swapping chess for backgammon. And believe it or not, chess won their bet on who had the superior game. It had to do with who could figure out how to play the game based on just the pieces. And with chess winning, well, it went on to become a huge sensation in Europe, moving quickly after the Crusades from Arabia into Northern Europe and all the way into France, south of Europe, like Spain. Pieces have changed over the years to reflect different cultures, but the traditional way we see the pieces, the way they're usually represented in pop culture, the way they are on, well, most modern chessboards, has been around for the last 300 or 400 years. Although obviously modern chessboards have taken unique approaches, to the deco and even to the shape of the characters and the board, or rather the pieces, as they would traditionally be called. Calling them characters is much more of a issue with the licensed chess, which we're going to get into. Obviously, the boards have changed shape and size as well, but no matter which way you play chess, there's only one thing that really unites it. It's that it's one side against the other. And how those pawns, kings, bishops, pieces look are basically up to the comfort level of the players. Some people prefer very traditional look. Others will play based on whatever artistic fancy comes to mind, creating chessboards out of anything they have around the house or available on a desert island. Now, what I really want to talk about is licensed chess. And this doesn't get discussed that much on the internet, on YouTube, so I thought it might be time to make an appropriate video. Because as as a chess fan, collector, and toy maker, there's some unique problems with licensed chess. And I want to reiterate that point, that I'm coming at this from three different angles. One, a chess fan. Two, a toy maker. And three, a pop culture nerd. So with all three of those on my resume, obviously there is no limit to the number of high-end, beautiful, traditional chess sets you can buy. I mean, go to any game show and you will see some beautiful displays. And you can get a basic set down at your local drugstore for probably between $5 and $10. So there's all range of price, quality, material, you name it. You can get glass, wood, plastic. Companies are always looking for ways to innovate a game that's in public domain where there is no royalty to be paid. So things like no stress chess, designed to teach young players or beginners how to play, chess involving Lego, where you actually build the board and you build the pieces. And now you can even get those giant pieces you see on vacation resorts for your backyard, which I'm totally doing this one summer. I just haven't gotten around to it yet. All right, so obviously, chess and the toy industry, very much connected, but with licensed chess, it also becomes about billboarding a property, meaning displaying the breadth of the license. And When a company licenses their IP, in this case the image of Star Wars, for use in a chess set, well, they're going to work with the game company or toy company manufacturer on which characters should be the pieces, who should represent each piece on the chessboard with a character from that IP. And 99.99% of the time, it's the most popular characters in the middle working their way out. So whoever are the top 10 characters from an IP wind up the characters on the chessboard. All right, so why do I have a problem with this? I mean, it seems like a great way to engage with a brand and play chess, right? You play Star Wars, you want Luke and Leia on the board. Well, here is the issue, and it's multifactorial. One is there's a reason that the modern chess pieces have remained virtually the same for the last few hundred years. Not only is there a visual recognition, but there is a tactile recognition built into traditional chess pieces, meaning they're all designed to be held in the hand, not like this, but specifically like this, to clasp with two fingers. You'll even see knights sometimes have grooves on the side of them where you would place your thumb and forefinger. There is an emotional connection with this because the way the chess pieces are designed to be picked up, when you take another piece, there is a feeling that the piece is an extension of your hand and therefore your body and your whole person. When you change the shape of the pieces, while it's a novelty and it's fun and it's been done since the Renaissance, believe me, well, however you change the shapes, whether they're on a board or on a virtual computer, you're now taking away from the natural body-piece organic connection that has come about through the emergence of the modern piece. The other problem, or rather, shall I just say, issue for discussion, is the fact that it's harder to recognize pieces that are outside of the traditional shapes. It's sometimes, is Superman the king, the queen, which one's the pawn again? Or is DC the wait a minute, who's who? I mean, yes, they're all labeled on the base when you look at these characters from a straight-on perspective, but from the top down, there's a reason that these pieces and these shapes have lasted for so many hundreds of years. They're easy to recognize, they're easy to hold, and you don't have to continually think, okay, wait, which piece, which character I'm looking at represents which chess piece so it can move in what way. It's a much quicker recognition when you're using the images that we're, well, used to. All right, obviously you can train yourself, but I'm a very lazy person, and I like the chess pieces the traditional way. Now, the other issue with licensed chess, though, is not just that the shapes are changed, but who you're looking at as a representation of that piece. So, for example, here's a Lord of the Rings set with all the characters. Here's one where all of the pawns are the same character. So this is a perfect example of what I mean. If you're going to be getting lost in the world of this IP through a chess set, to me, as a pop culture nerd, it throws me off when Samwise Gamgee is on the board 8 times versus in this set, he's only on the board once, which is correct to the intellectual property. All right, I know I may be pulling at hairs here, but hear me out. It's much more than the repetition of a character that shouldn't be repeated, but also about how the pieces move and their representation. So to do that, let's introduce ourselves to Mr. and Mr. Pawn, or Mrs. and Mrs. Pawn, or they and them pawn. Oh, gosh, I shouldn't be giving the pawns pronouns. All right, let's just call them Pawn 1 and Pawn 2. Oh, all right, well, the point is, while a lot of us think of pawns as the easy, quick pieces to knock off or attack, they're basically just meat for the enemy. The pawns are actually one of the most powerful pieces because they give the ability to become a queen. Once you cross the entire board, your pawn gets to be any other piece it wants to be, and most likely it's going to be a queen because that piece can move in any direction. All right, so besides that fact, the pawn is a little bit of a confusing piece because of the fact that not only do you have 8 of the same, and they're all lined up first, but their moves are weird. Their first move can move 2 squares, but then they can only move 1 square, and they attack on a diagonal, but they only move vertically forward. Pawns are literally the most confusing piece of the entire chess set. So to look at the way they're represented in licensed sets, and I know I've been using a lot of Star Wars and Lord of the Rings sets, but that's because it's sort of easy to understand who's the good guy and who's the bad guy. I don't want any argument over, light and dark here. All right, so dark side, you've got stormtroopers as the pawns. Perfect. Makes absolute sense. There's a lot of them, and there's a lot of pawns. They represent the grunts. Same thing here on this rebel side, you get the rebel troopers, or in this case, rebel pilots. Perfect. Grunt versus grunt. Here in this Lord of the Rings set, on the dark side, if you will, the evil side, it's all golems. So there's 8 golems on the board. And there's other choices because there are armies for the good guys and bad guys, like orcs. Or it could be, orcs could be pawns. All right, let's look at the king and queen for a maybe more concrete example. So obviously, king and queen, very important pieces, usually represented by the top tier in the IP, in this case for the dark side, Vader and the Emperor. But on the light side here, you have Luke and Leia. All right, will make sense from an intellectual property standpoint because they're the 2 most popular characters that are male, female, hence king, queen, to have that duality, if you will. I mean, obviously the king and queen don't actually have a gender or sex. They just, why am I even getting into this stuff? I know, YouTube and all of this stuff. All right, so I don't want to be canceled. What can I say? For me, with a Star Wars set, it might make more sense to have Mon Mothma and General Dodonna or Admiral Akbar as king queen. That's the role they play. The same thing with the bishop. This might be an even better example. So looking at the bishop, obviously it's a character that's meant to be the advisor to the king and queen. It stands next to them on the chessboard, and each player has a dark and a light bishop. One that's on the dark squares, one that's on the light squares, and they can move diagonally across the entire board, but only diagonally. Which to me, the bishop is kind of a sort of a sneaky, spectral kind of character, like a ghost, if you will, because, well, you can kind of just move right through things all the way across the board, all in once. It's not like moving through walls. That's, I don't know, how I tend to look at the bishop. And, well, so looking at this for a licensed property, a good way this translates from piece movement into character might be something like Vision. Vision moves through anything like a ghost, right, in his spectral form. So looking at the way the bishop piece moves on the board and finding a character that also represents that type of movement or that type of aggression or that type of play. With Star Wars, this might translate to more sneakiness. So Boba Fett, who's always in the background, I mean, going by the original trilogy, if you will, and not, you never know who he is. Another example, if we look at the rook, which is a piece that can move back and forth straight, but not diagonal, the opposite of a bishop. So it's a bit more of like a plowing through. If you're even all the way across the board and you're in the eyes of the rook, it'll take you. Kind of like a bulldozer, right? It's just going to smash right through anything, no matter where it is. So could that be represented, if you will, by the Hulk? Hulk moves like a bishop, or excuse me, a rook would move, going straight forward. Or for Star Wars, Chewbacca, again, very aggressive, smashing type behavior. At least when you look at the rook and how it's going to move across the board, it makes sense. So here's a mashup I created for Star Wars, right? So white is the rebellion, king piece, Mon Mothma, queen, Admiral Akbar. Mon Mothma is the king, not because of a sex or gender, but because she is the head. All right, bishop, generic X-Wing pilots. Knight, Han and Luke on Tauntauns. Rook, a Mon Calamari cruiser. Pawn, rebel fleet troopers kneeling. On the black side, the Empire, the king, Palpatine, the queen, Vader. Bishop, royal guards. Knight, scout troopers on speeder bikes. The rook, a star destroyer, and pawns, stormtroopers kneeling. I created that list based on everything I presented in this video of what I feel would make a better licensed opportunity for chess, really incorporating the way chess pieces move and their representation in the IP, not just their ranking in the IP. All right, well, let me know what you think. What's your take? Have you ever thought about making a chess set from a licensed property? Who would you choose? Share this video with others. I most appreciate it. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the comment section.